Welcome to this episode of Let's Chat. I'm your host, Chris Revill, coming out from the Cat Cave in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm actually recording this intro and episode at the What Cheer Writers Club in downtown Providence, Rhode Island. Let's Chat is a long-form conversational podcast where I, your host, Chris Revill, use my behavioral health background to chat with guests from the worlds of punk rock, podcasting, and pop culture. Today's episode is actually different for a lot of reasons. I'm actually your host. I'm your guest. I've never, ever had another person come on and be a host. And we're doing that for a very special reason today. And we're going to get into it. And I'm sure you'll figure out from the notes why. So I decided I was really thinking a lot of how to do this. And I hate writing. And I was like, well, I have a podcast. Maybe I should use my podcast form to express to the people how I'm feeling. And I was like, well, who can get information out of me better than anyone in the entire world? And that's Dwight Hurst. So, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and germs, because we're cool. Dwight Hurst will be taking the reins and interviewing me for my own podcast for the first time in 8 years.
Thank you, Chris. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, beautiful people all over the world. It's me, your permanent to semi-permanent guest host for an indeterminate amount of time. Well, this episode. Actually, it's pretty well determined. It's this episode. That's it. Tried to make it more mysterious. I am grateful and honored to be the first guest hosting today on the Let's Chat show. It's a show I've been a part of here and there, and you've been a part of mine. It's a near and dear thing to my heart as it is to your listeners out there, and that's obviously what we're talking about today. I
would go as far to say that you're part of the DNA of Let's Chat. You're and I mean that. I mean, you've been on a handful of times, and that's always been fun. But we met a long time ago, and we stayed friends, and became podcast friends, and become friends, and we've talked. I think at this point we've spoken to each other more outside of podcast recording content than each other. We've worked together. Like, we had my very first job in the industry was with you, and so like you're in my circle of people I go to whenever I have to make decisions.
Yeah. Well, and me too. It's interesting because when you do podcasts with people, oftentimes the relationship is around the podcast, which of course is normal. I have a lot of guests that come on my show a bit that we become friends, but typically we talk to each other when we're recording, maybe 20 minutes before or after here and there. But I will say, just like you said with us, we've grown past that to where we've actually called each other on the phone even when no one was recording anything.
And then talk about how,
except for the federal government. Of course,
yeah,
they're recording all of us.
Then we're like, we should have recorded this. No, and I want. Can I? If I won't, I'll be a good guest. But I want to share a story too. Is that relates to everything we're talking about today with the hiatus. It was in 2020. I had lost my first client to suicide, and it really sucks. And Dwight was one of the people who called me on the phone just to talk. And we both work in the field. You're a therapist. I think you might have gone through similar experiences. And I was like in my head, I'm like, all right, that was the moment. I was like, what a stand-up guy.
Well, having had some of those complicated feelings before, it just hit me. And when you had let me know, I think in text, I was just like, I gotta call him. I'm gonna see how he's doing, because sometimes those things sneak up. And you obviously understand trauma and things better than a lot of people, but. Anyway, yeah, I felt like that was, and I felt a real connection to you and to your show, and that's kind of a transition into some of the announcements. As you put it, there's going to be some notes, show notes and such people have already seen, but should we hit upon that word right away? You already used the H word.
Oh, yeah.
Hiatus.
I feel like at this point,
dictionary says No, I'm just kidding. Tell us what you mean when you say hiatus.
Yeah. This will be released with all the announcements all simultaneously. This is, I guess, for anyone who wants to go beyond reading a paragraph or watching an Instagram post or whatever. So Let's Chat is going to be going on a hiatus, and it's really strange feeling for me. And it's a good hiatus. Let me preface with that. It's not like last time where my life fell apart and I got super depressed and just couldn't go on anymore. It's actually quite the opposite. I've become really busy and good busy. I've been working a lot doing freelance and consulting, and I've been in my day job for a long time, and I don't think anyone who works there will hear this. but I've been putting a big effort to really wanting to work in full time into the industry. And, you know, there's only so many hours in the day of how many things you could do. And my good friend Caroline from the Finding Disney podcast had pitched me this idea that she wanted to start like a monthly Marvel podcast with me. And I got really, really, really excited about that. And then I had this thought, I was like, I started to get stressed out. It's like, I just don't have enough time to do that. Plus Let's Chat, plus the freelance, plus trying to get my career, plus trying to like work a day job I'm already burned out in, plus the job. I mean, plus having a 4-year-old. And then I just had I was thinking, my friend Nikolai, who's been on the show several times, and another good friend, her voice popped into my head, and she's like, "All right, ADHD boy, you need to follow the money," and that's always been my problem. So it just kind of got to the point where I was getting a lot of stress and anxiety over Let's Chat with Chris Revill, the podcast feed itself. Everything else is staying active, because I was not putting the time that goes into it. I wasn't getting the downloads. I wasn't marketing. I was getting stressed out to do it justice, to do it right, to get where I needed to be or wanted to be. It just became an impossible task. And then I started having some ugly, jealous feelings of other people who were surpassing me. And that wasn't fair to them, because they're working way harder than I was on the thing I was working on, and realizing that was more internal.
Yeah.
Like it was me.
And it's a healthy thing to turn that insight inward, isn't it? To be able to say, oh, why is this not working? Why is this not working? And then you're looking at a couple aspects. I think a lot of us find different projects and things, and we invest ourselves. I know I'll invest myself in something, and it'll take me a while to realize, oh, it's not going where I wanted. And I'll have to say, oh, wait, I haven't really done all the things that would get it there necessarily. I just thought about them, or maybe thought I was doing them. There's a kind of famous scene in an episode of Parks and Rec during the season where Leslie Knope is running for city council, and she has this talk with Nick Offerman's character, which is a really cool thing, knowing that these two people also in real life are friends, Amy Poehler and Nick Offerman. But so they act the scene out together, and I think of the line a lot where Ron Swanson says to her, don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. Now, in real life, of course, what are we talking about? We're talking about cutting down from 4 to 2, maybe, right? Or from 6 to 1, or,
of course,
or 6 to 2, or 6 to 3, something like that. But there's an application there that you're saying, where are my feelings and where is my investment going to suffer, right?
Yeah.
To a certain extent, if you love a project, you don't want to run it into the ground after not having energy for it anymore either.
Yeah, and like that's. I love it, but I just don't have the means to hire the people I want to hire, because that is part of the goal. Because I don't want to make it anymore, to be quite honest. Like, I'm burnt the fuck out. I don't want to edit, which I had been working with Robbie Sherman, and then later the Vern, good friends of ours, on the editing front. And then I was like, really gonna let's try to build out a Patreon. That was not really working for me. I wasn't putting the energy into it. I love guest booking, but man, it takes a lot of emails to get one person to do something, and it's nobody's fault. It's just how it is. And then I've climbed the ladder a bit, and I now sometimes I'll work with like a PR person. I was like, oh my God, that guest doesn't have to deal with 75 emails just to get to this one episode. Of course, they're doing other things. So I was like, I was kind of running it, and actually, let me kind of backtrack, because I was thinking about it earlier. Like, I've always wanted Let's Chat to be the biggest podcast it could possibly be. And I think I look back, I probably should have done this a little earlier, I think with pretty much complete DIY, guerrilla marketing, getting our fan base literally one by one, and having a personal conversation with pretty much almost everyone who's ever listened. It's maybe not everyone, actually, to be quite honest, but put a lot of hours into
anybody out there now that you haven't talked to is going like, hey,
as I
where's
said,
my call?
Well, you could definitely message me online. I'll definitely respond. And just putting a lot of work into it. So we've gotten into we've made it into Vulture, made it into Huffington Post. We've top 2% of global podcasts according to Listen Notes, which is huge. The big moment for us was I think it was if this doesn't work, we got to reassess. Was Colin, I believe his last name, I think it's Colin Anderson, that someone from Earwolf had reached out to us and was like, so you talk to, send over your pitch deck to them and Maximum Fun. And I decided I really wanted to get on a big network, and I shot my shot. Didn't happen, which was fine. Honestly, it was just quite the honor. And reflecting back on that, it's like, well, if I had put all the hours into the marketing that I used to do, I don't know. I think once Stitcher and Maximum Fun didn't work out, I had a couple little offers for smaller networks. I just wasn't there anymore. I was like, yeah. But I also don't want to quit. So it's like, yeah. So that's where that's at. So that's where hiatus came from.
I think it's the same with any creative or passion project. You have to be careful to remember that the project is there for you, that it's your project, that you don't belong to the project, right? And you look at that and you say, why do things work out the way they do? There's no real answer for that. There's no universal answer for that. Do things work out for a reason, or do you just make do with the things that do happen? That's not really the scope of our discussion today to figure out that philosophical, cosmic, spiritual question, but they do happen, right? And that's what you're discussing. And I remember talking with you during those times when you were thinking, okay, are we at a point where this podcast, my main flagship podcast, is the thing that's going to skyrocket through, or take me to this next step? And it sounds like you're at this point. Well, I guess let me frame it like this as a question. How has that been? Has it been hard to adjust that? So we can.
Yeah, it's awesome, to be honest, because I've done the show for 8 years, but I would say the last 2 years, once Bree and I teamed up at the end of 2019, I'd say the last 2.5 years, we've been working really, really hard. And especially with Bree, when she came on the team, it turned from podcast to brand. I honestly started finding myself really more interested in brand management and that kind of stuff. So I feel like the last couple of years, I've been really working towards a goal. I didn't have a good goal in place. Rather, I was just putting a lot of work out there. And I didn't know where I was going to land with it. So if anything, my goals just pivoted. Opportunities that I've never expected came up. I work as a consultant. It's now the most money I've ever made in an hour. People I don't know and companies reach out to me and pay me money, and it's awesome. I'm working on a freelance project, and that freelance project is a narrative podcast that is picking up like that. All that I had known that workload is going to really be picking up at the end of this year, at the end of this month. So, we worked on the So and Jones project together, which is my first dip into the industry. So I just, unbeknownst to me, I had built this $600 an hour skill set that I didn't recognize while working my job, which was technically my career for the last 12 years. I've been in the same position for 8, same field for 12. Mm-hmm. But it's I feel like a worthless peon there. I'm a nobody. And then in the podcast space, I was starting to make a name for myself on the local and probably not national, but definitely locally. The industry's grown. So I hope I answered the questions.
I think so. No, well, you're talking about the pivoting that happens sort of naturally. My grandpa told me a long time ago that, if you're waiting for a sign or you're waiting for a direction, you'll wait for a long time. But if you're moving, you find a way to go, right? And it's not always the way you plan on, right? It's not what you plan on. Yeah.
And maybe we'll have to do another episode because there's things I can't really get into it now because it's still up in the air. But there's my career shift is working in a much faster direction. One of the things I did actually, I hired somebody to help me with my resume because I had never put my Let's Chat or any of my media work down. I had no idea how much stuff I've done. I have 8 years of experience in a field that's 15 years old. 6 of those years I never thought of. I wasn't a clearly defined, I'm going to set out and do this for 8 years, and then I'm going to switch career paths. But I don't have any other discernible skills to get me out of my field to make as much as I do now. And all of a sudden I do. And some big stuff is kind of coming around the corner, and it feels really nice. I guess I'm happy about it. It's hard to let go. It is. It's in a way because you love it. And it got me all these places, but it's not going to pay the mortgage yet.
Well, I think you're talking about respecting podcasting as an industry instead of just a show. I think when people say, I have a podcast, or they hear someone say they have a podcast, they think, oh, everybody's waiting to be the next Joe Rogan. And I find this, and you and I have both experienced this when we talk to people in the role of a consultant, or, I produce a couple of shows outside of my own show, and What I've noticed is that I will say the two shows that are ongoing shows that I produce, both of them have very targeted, specific goals. They're not, oh, try to be Rogan. I got to get 1 billion people to listen. It's, oh, this is part of my marketing. This is part of my strategy. This is part of my mission. And they have realistic goals around that just aren't that. And so I think thinking beyond that, we're sort of trained to think, and I keep mentioning Joe Rogan mostly because I don't want anyone to be Joe Rogan. Even Joe Rogan. Sorry, this is your show. I don't want to.
Even Joe Rogan doesn't want to be Joe Rogan.
Even Joe Rogan, we don't want him to be Joe Rogan. Anyway, whatever. But I just that's the one that people mention that, or they'll say, "What about Serial?" Or we have a narrow view, and I'm sure that it's very similar to when television started, or when people look at the music industry, even now, and they think, "Oh, you're a singer." Oh, if you're a singer, that's what it means to work in music. Well, no, not at all. There's thousands of jobs in music, right? And there's different avenues and different things like that go. And I think when people are outside of podcasting, and unfortunately a lot of people, indie people inside of podcasting, fail to see the scope. And you're talking about having an adjustment to say, well, I'm getting into production, working in a narrative format. And I'll tell you the other thing that sometimes happens, even with the big players in the industry. I think all of us have had maybe that podcast on our update list, on our app, whatever app you use to listen. And it might even be one of the ones from the big boys and the big gals who put out their show. And you can tell when it's gone on a little too long. And when maybe they've started another project, but they still felt like I got to keep my numero uno show going. And it's like,
that was
you haven't
me.
cared about this for a while, have you? Yeah.
I think that's what happened to me. And if you follow us on social media or subscribe, you have noticed where it's just like nothing, a new episode, and then I don't really post about it. And we're having pretty big names and stuff. Like it's like some of these episodes should be having so many more downloads, but it's no one's fault I didn't find it because I didn't promote it enough. I didn't have that drive anymore. But yeah, I guess I totally agree with what you're saying, especially within the indie podcast community, where like somewhere it went from I wanted to make a podcast to I want to work in podcasting. I always knew like being a host would be like the goal, but I also know that's really hard. Like there's very few people who make their living. Even like I remember years ago interviewing Travis McElroy from My Brother and Me and the McElroy fame, and like he was the first person I ever met or interviewed who made their living off doing podcasts. But he had 8 podcasts. And he had a book, and the more I listen and the more I talk with people, like anyone who's quote unquote makes it that you see, they all have like 75 different jobs. Mm-hmm. So then that kind of started like shifting my thinking of like, I would love to have a job that kind of like right now my job is I'm a case manager at a psychiatric hospital. I work an outpatient. That those 40 plus hours a week don't do anything towards my goal that I'm working on. But if I could work in the field, even if I'm just an editor or working somewhere on someone else's shit, that's 40 hours plus on top of, and I have, so I haven't had any of that. I've only been able to put my free time in Let's Chat. And now I'm not sure if anyone noticed there's a pandemic and I have a 4-year-old and that makes life hard. So it all comes down to time. Like the want is still there. I just want someone else to market and book it and edit. And if that's something you want to do, reach out. We can talk because the goal, we come back, it's going to look different, but that will be how it will be.
So let's talk about that. First of all, in the interim here, this is not a cancellation, take down the show. This is an announcement of a hiatus of new episodes, right?
Yeah, and the funniest thing is I actually have we're still going to put stuff out in the feed. I know that we're going to do Let's Chat Zeitgeist that we were doing on Patreon, which I never posted on our Patreon because that's why I can't run a Patreon right now. We'll put those like random ones up. And then, Caroline, I mean, I already have one booked that will go out after the hiatus. So I guess it's more my personal anxiety of like, all right, the person who I felt guilty about the people who are having on, and I was like, I'm not doing them a service. Like they're giving me their time, and they deserve to get an audience. If you're out there making your new album or whatever, and so like I'm like now I could just once every month or every 6 months, every 3 months, whenever I feel like it, I could pop on. I'm also gonna put more energy in just to be guesting on other people's show. So like everything stays the same. Let's Chat with Chris Revill, the podcast itself, will stop having new episodes. But the Let's Chat media brand is going to actually, I'm gonna put more effort into my own personal brand, if you will. So like I'm gonna just guest on more people's shows and kind of just see where everything takes me and put my work elsewhere and yeah.
So people would still see announcements and things like that, replays possibly, or just the feeds available if you want to go back.
Yeah. I'm thinking of doing that, finding someone. I think I'll talk to you about afterwards, see how much someone would be like, hey, how much if someone would just go to my Libsyn and set it up so like once every few weeks we get a replay episode. Like we have a lot to work with. It's just I don't have the time to be the one to do it right now. And now that like we have some revenue coming in, I can do stuff like that, which has been really nice. So like I also like knew that like my goal is to run Let's Chat Media as my company and then hire all of the people I've worked with and loved and my friends. But I have never worked with, I also have a learning disability. I'm like, I cannot jump into run. I can't leave my job right now and start a company. It's going to fail. But if I could work in the industry and learn and maybe my goals will change from there. Like maybe I find something I love and I stay there forever. Like there's nothing wrong with that. I would love to be like a producer and then just do a podcast for fun and have built up your community and make some few bucks doing that too.
I know you've talked about this on my show, and I think you've talked about it a little bit in your show when we've told your story of going through trauma, going through EDMR and recovery of that. What role does that play in this kind of flexibility and this kind of approach to your life at this point?
Oh, somebody's a good host and has been doing their research. From one host to another, great question. I would say 100% of everything. All of this has been a combination of doing EMDR therapy over the last couple of years. And a lot of what I'm learning about like entrepreneurship and these types of stuff is the stuff that separates people who are successful versus people like who aren't like me. I'll say what separated me from other people doing what they want to do was we're both afraid. They still do it. And so I was in my own way, and EMDR really helped me do that inner work and figure out what's stopping me. Why don't I want to do that? Like, my words and my actions, my words weren't lining up. So it kind of got like really deep and it instilled like a level of confidence that I could do this. Like, instead of fake it till you make it, you ever hear that? Instead of saying that, now I do act as if. So instead of fake it till you make it, you're just like, I know what you're doing. Act as if it's like I'm supposed to be here.
I like that a lot better. I like as if thinking a lot better than I think fake it till you make it. I think it implies a lot of pressure on people. And it burns. Yeah. I find that phrase and that mentality burns people out more than it inspires them, actually.
Yeah. Like I honestly have lost out a lot of opportunities. I've had a lot of really nice people and a lot of people I looked up to say very kind things to me over the last 8 years. And I remember many of the times just completely deflecting them because I refused to believe I was good at this. Like it took so long to even admit to myself to be like, I'm good at this. I remember one time going to a wedding and Victoria was in the wedding. So I was so I ended up hanging out with one of the other bridesmaids dates and we never had met each other. Really nice. And just like, God, do you have any, we were talking at dinner, like, do you have any hobbies? Like, no. And then later on, Victoria said something about my podcast, and he's like, "Oh, you have a podcast? How come you didn't mention that?" Like, I used to feel like I had it as like a separate life, where I never talked about it. It was like a whole secret world that I had. No one at my job knew about it. Like, it wasn't that. And then, shame. It helped me get rid of all that shame around about being like, here's this kind of wacky, weird thing that I want to do, and nobody else that I know in my personal life understands. But I don't know why I think I could do it.
Well, I wonder, that started out, I think, as a new media thing to where it's like, oh, you have a podcast. And then now the transition is to say, oh, everybody has a podcast. You and I have talked about this in different formats at length, but the idea that everyone has a podcast is like...
Not even true.
Not even true. No, exactly. It's not even everyone has been tapped to listen yet. The listening market is still growing, as well as... The other thing is that the majority of podcasts that do exist have less than 8 episodes, right? And haven't posted in over, is it 120 days? I think is the stat.
Yeah.
But
I think there's 3 million podcasts.
Yeah, something like
that. And the average
right?
podcast, if you have like over like 100 downloads in 30 days, you're in the top like 20% or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, the first, right, the bottom, like the bottom 80 is like ones that just don't update at all. So
I'm in the top 2%, and I don't make any money. I'm only the top 0.1% or even 0.5. Like I've looked up like office ladies, and they're 0.0005%, and they're
sure.
making money. So like,
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So you have a big variation of that, but it's interesting because if someone's like, oh, I have a TV show. You have a TV show? Wow. Versus you're like,
are there enough TV shows, Dwight?
aren't there enough TV shows? But I think because the new media and because people have that perception, I think it becomes like this. Oh, do I say I have a podcast? Does that just sound like some silly hobby? And are people going to be like, oh, good for you? Whereas I think now, of course, you get more people have an understanding of, oh, that's one way you produce art. That's a way you are creative, at the least, they understand that. And usually it has to do more with, oh, that's cool. Tell me more. Now, when you have one that is a fairly successful podcast that has pulled people from various industries and has done many of the things that you have tried to get it to do, and isn't it funny to say that's the thing that we're sort of conditioned to feel silly to say, oh, I have a podcast. Oh, who's been on the? Oh, well, do you listen to podcasts? You might have heard of Travis McElroy. Oh my, what? I mean, if you listen
or usually
to
no, never heard of any of those people. I'm like, well, that's because you're not the target audience.
Right, exactly. And with you though, you've had Tad Stones on the show who worked on the original DuckTales. You've had, you had the singer of Gaslight Anthem was on, I remember. And,
drummer, yeah, Benny.
Drummer, right.
Yeah.
And many other, you can list more if you want to.
God, it blows my mind. And for better or worse, I think I also feel like for a long time, I never found acceptance in all the communities, for better or worse. Like I don't always fit in the punk rock podcast world. I don't always fit in with the movie film Twitter people. I don't, movie podcast. Cause like you said, like, so we would have like, yeah, cause I remember like, cause in my head, I look at the way the episodes released, but I remember going, Tad Stones, who created Darkwing Duck and Animation Legend. And then we had the writers from Bob's Burgers, and they were back-to-back episodes, which was fucking crazy. And then it was Matt Sancom, who's the founder of The Hard Times, the satirical website about punk culture.
I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but like, there's a small Venn diagram of people who love animation and punk as much as, and comedy as much as I do. Or like, or the last couple, we had Dave McWayne from Big D and the Kids Table, and then the next one is Kristen Logan that's out most recently, who's Kristen Logan, who's a stand-up comedian, and so, or Chris Gethard was like another huge fucking deal to me, and like it's awesome, I fucking love it, but it doesn't always work. If I had better marketing, it does. To me, I think it invites a much more open-minded listener, but I also feel like I definitely retain listenership, but I noticed that whenever I take that 10, my numbers would dip, but I would always like, well, it's for me, like if I followed the data, you would just see nothing but like more punk singers on here. But people who like punk music do not like donating to Patreons and supporting shows financially, and that's fine. That's just the culture. I'm fully aware of that. Whereas the geek culture, which I absolutely love, it's so like I'm an odd person, and then as I also have gone through trauma and I worked in the field, so then you throw someone who also just loves to like get to like, talk about weird shit like that. I think it makes for something interesting, but it's not for everything. Like sometimes, like when Benny Horowitz came on from Gaslight Anthem, and wonderful podcast host as well, for going off track, we didn't talk about music or podcasting. It just turned into like he had like a therapy session. So for me, I love that. Yeah. But for someone's like, well, let's talk about the time you played Bruce Springsteen. Like I always go out of my way to not get those late night show talk. Like it's the complete opposite right. of what we do here.
Because what do you,
which we're like,
and I'm like you. I feel like for me, and this has probably made it more difficult for listeners to settle on my show as well, in a way, because for me, having a podcast, one of the values is the eclectic approach you can have to it, and say.
Yes.
I always think of it like this, the number one benefit of having a podcast, especially if it's one that you can say, like you and I both are able to say, people do listen to our show. It does get out there. We can pop out some numbers here that make people want to say, oh, okay, that might be worth my time to go on. But the best thing of all of having it is that you can shoot an email off to someone. I can read an article about somebody doing some research, or someone who has even a modicum celebrity, or if I can find a contact, I can send something that says, I'd like to sit down and talk to you for around an hour. And isn't that cool? And and I have a podcast. I can add that, send that at the end so I don't sound like a stalker.
Yeah.
Right. And then you get to meet the people and you get to form either relationships or encounters with people who are really fascinating people. And to me, that's kind of the number one reason to do it.
Oh, getting to the point where like I always feel like podcasting is just an adult play date on some level.
I like that. That's great. I'm totally gonna use that.
It's very even selfishly. It feels like I want to connect with the people who made the art I love, whether it was like someone who had a small role, like remember we both interviewed Anna Maria Leante?
Yeah.
Yes. So she had a small role in The Force Awakens, and we both had interviewed her. And oh my God, that was so cool.
And then beyond, I think that was the least of what we talked about when I had her on my show. It turned into a 2-part episode because she was a fascinating person who had advocacy experience. She's an actress, a model. She was, when, like you said, was in Star Wars, a named character, although no dialogue. But anyway, yeah, she was a fascinating person to talk to, and being in Star Wars was probably, although I mean I don't want to say anything of how she would feel about it, but probably the least interesting thing about her when you talk to her.
For sure,
she was really this smart and motivated advocate for people.
Absolutely. Or then it's like Nathan Gray is the singer of legendary hardcore band Voice Sets Fire, is a band that changed my life when I was 16. I bet most people don't know who that is, but now I call him a friend. Like. I was when he came through town last time, I was on the guest list. I've in some instances I've gotten to talk to it and sometimes become friends with, or I interviewed Chris Gethard, and then I got to go see him do stand up the following month, and I got to stop and say hello, and I was like, yeah, you don't remember me? He's like, yeah, I do, and like those barriers kind of break down.
Griffin Newman was on your show too, right? If I'm not
mistaken. Yes, that was another big one. Like actually he did 2. One of them we had to stop 30 minutes into it, and he was nice enough to come back and do a proper one. And he was super vulnerable. And or Rahul Kohli, another one, like holy shit, who's now getting to talk to people before they blow up. Or like there's I interviewed Bob Dearden, who is the writer for who's a television writer for their show iZombie, which nobody watched. But now Bob works on Cobra Kai, and we've remained friends. And I'm just like, oh, this is so weird. Like my friend is writing on one of the most popular shows in like our nerd world right now. And like, we were just emailing back and forth the other day. Like just what?
Yeah. Well, and so let's talk about a little bit about some of the things that are not going away. And I have a bit of a hand in this. One of the aspects that we'd like to maintain and keep going is the YouTube side of things with Let's Chat Live, interviewing podcasters.
Talk about neglect. Like Bree and I, our life just got so busy, and we just couldn't carry the weight of doing a weekly show anymore. And we never stopped, and we never did another one. So it's been kind of been weighing on me. So that I know you're going to be picking up the mantle on that one, and I get to pop in and.
Exactly, and here's what I can even put this out here if Chris doesn't like it, he can edit it out. The Let's Chat Live format is really nice because it's the Let's Chat community of podcasters. We're taking turns pitching in, and with the live YouTube interviews live, and then drop them later as well, and they stay up on YouTube. The streaming interviews of podcasters, and it's actually introduced me to not only some cool shows but to some cool guests of my own to come over on my show. So,
vice versa.
And the nice thing about the format is we rotate.
That's how we met Reels of Justice.
Oh, that is, isn't it? Yes, yeah. I just recorded with them the other day. Right? I was the defense against their show is a mock courtroom where movies are tried to decide if they're bad movies or not. And I was the defense counsel for Age of Ultron, Marvel's Age of Ultron.
Oh, so. I can't wait for that. Or the Jock Doc podcast. I was just on that again the other night. Like, I love London and Cam. Like, those guys are so great. And then we met from doing Let's Chat Live. Yeah, Let's Chat Live started as essentially we're like, we wanted Let's Chat with Chris Revill, the podcast feed, to be like our A game, like our big names. And then we still wanted to talk to everyone, but we just didn't have enough time. So like, well, why don't we do that? And then it's supposed to be rotating with guest and host. And then it's a lot to manage. And I just neither of us were able to do that anymore.
So what,
and I think that that
Yeah.
will kind of help expand our brand too, right? So now it's like I want it to be like now when you think I almost started singing Dolly Parton. When you think about love, think about me. Like I want you to I want people to like my bigger goal is like I want when people think of Let's Chat is like how Nerdist kind of is like Chris Hardwick, Jonah Ray, Matt Myra. Like I want you to know me and Bree and Dwight like, and you and like Ball and all those and Sonetta and all these just wonderful humans or Vern, one of our favorite humans on fucking earth. We love Vern and how Ashley like I just love that and like
Right.
and even like the Let's Chat Club that we're doing like that's not gonna go away, but we're gonna kind of retool it. Like we love all those people and like it's just like I want people to think I want it to be about me in the sense where when you think of me, you can think of like John and all these wonderful, awesome podcasters. Like John from Reddit on Wiki, one of our Let's Chat Club members, like they started his own network. Like that's everything I've ever wanted. Is like I want to take all these people and I'll teach you whatever I can teach. Take whatever you can from me and go on and surpass me, and then remember me when you surpass me.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something we're going to keep going. I'm actually, the first stage is going to be recruiting. I want to build out a big enough group of hosts that we can have frequent episodes, but so no one necessarily has to be on the hook to carry the whole thing. So I will say anybody out there that's podcasters, if you'd like to be interviewed on Let's Chat Live, or if you want to actually help out and pitch in with some of the interviewing too, hit us up, talk to me.
Please.
Yeah.
And we'll like release those on our feed too. So like they'll go on the feed for a couple of days or a week or something. So like the feed will still be active. I'm probably going to be a little internet silent for a little bit, but our Facebook group will still be going strong. Also like, imagining if I have a job working in the industry and actually know how to do this without like, I mean, we're not even, I don't know about you, Dwight, but like, we're talking like, I'm like the epitome of self-taught. I taught myself how to make a podcast. A friend of mine gave me a book. I learned how to edit from YouTube. I watched YouTube videos about Audacity and how to edit.
Yeah.
I've learned from booking from Failing and David the producer from Unmurderable Rant had made this really great video. Basically, here's how you do it. Like I taught myself everything, which is great, but there's definitely some big skill sets. So like, oh, imagine if like, I guess I know what it is to get what needs to get done to make it a number one podcast. And it takes, the biggest shows have a team of people. It's not just one person. I DIY'd myself to death. Actually, going back to your other question about EMDR therapy, that also, EMDR therapy helped me get over my shame. It also helped me really work through like control issues of letting other people, not having this idea that I have to do everything myself. Like I took so much pride that I did every aspect of the podcast itself. But like when I listen to Office Ladies, I don't like, well, this is good, but Jenna and Angela didn't edit it. I mean, sure.
You're
Mark
not
picturing,
you're not picturing Conan O'Brien sitting over an Audacity screen being like, oh,
yeah,
should I make this mono or stereo?
Yeah, like I know for a fact that Conan's wonderful, but is he the one responding to the email to make sure the guest is showing up on time and providing the link and the follow-up? Like, which is cool that I learned all that stuff, but I learned what I like and what I don't like. I learned what I could do, what I can't do. Like, so on one end, it's like, I feel like the complaining side of it is like, I don't want to do it because it takes up too much time. But the more mature approach of it was, I just need to put my focus towards other things. And I need, I got to quote Tick, I got to put me first.
It's a graduation commencement. I can't remember what university, but if you Google YouTube or do a YouTube search, it's Griffin McElroy. Speaking of My Brother and Me,
wow.
He does he talks about that exact thing of how they started My Brother and Me and some of the background of that, and how with all the things they've done, how he found that he was doing everything and how long it took them. And even now, if you listen to My Brother and Me, if you're a fan, now at the end, they'll say, and thanks to, I can't remember the name, but they've added an editor. And in that speech, and this speech was several years ago, he mentioned that show of all was like the hardest thing for him to let go of having anyone do. And he, at that point, even just a few years ago, giving the speech, said, I don't know if we'll ever hire an editor for My Brother and Me. I finally have released the reins for the other couple things, and so now they are, and that's someone who they do multiple shows. They've got videos. He also was one of the people who helped start Polygon. And if I'm not mistaken, that's why he was in Forbes for all that and whatever. So,
Wow.
they've started the Adventure Zone. They have a series of comics based off of their D&D podcast. They've written a book together, all that kind of stuff. And so, you look at that, and that's someone who just within the last few months stopped editing his main podcast. So you definitely have a different sort of self-pressure as an indie podcaster, no matter how big, you get at it. So yeah, it's a very interesting thing. And I think one of the things that applies beyond just podcasting, and I'll say this applies even just beyond creative endeavors, anybody who's out there, if you're looking to be successful, I think the message that you're sending is to have a certain amount of flexibility and to be honest about where you're putting your time. Because if you are like, oh, I'm in love with this new project, I really want it to do well. Well, what does that mean? I can't just jam it on the plate with everything else and expect that I'm going to do it justice,
Yeah. And I'll be doing a Marvel podcast too. And that's like another thing. I was like, I had never allowed myself to just hyper niche down. And I really love Marvel stuff. And I love Caroline so much. And I love Defining Disney. And I was just like, I was going to turn.
So great. That is such a good show. Yeah.
I was about to turn this down. I was like, oh, I can't turn it down. There's not enough time. I was like, wait, why?
There's so many fandom shows that are so full of snark and cynicism that, or you can also go to the saccharine sweet, I guess, on the other side of, but they do such a good job of being like discussing the Disney projects with affection, but yet at the same time actually having a real discussion that's interesting too. So
you can criticize without hating something. You can still love something and criticize it.
Right. Yeah.
I was noticing too of like when I had to edit, not even edit, like this is the perfect example of an ADHD burnout person. So I'm very fortunate. I've been working with some great sound people, Robbie Sherman, shout out from Conversations with Robbie, and Vern from Cinema Recall. And so I would for editing, I would just send over my episode and they would put everything together, right? That should be easy. No. Mm-hmm. I not once ever would record my intro early and send them everything all together. I would literally send them just the episode and maybe one or two other things. And then I was still going and recording the intro and then tacking it in and going to Audacity. I should not have been doing that. I was paying someone to do it, but I just didn't want to do it. I have ADHD because I wasn't getting my dopamine from it. I was like, I would just put it off and procrastinate. So I was literally paying people for work that should have been easier. I'm like, all right, this is deeper than just like than whatever I'm thinking it is. Like it's like I just never got a good system in place because I was like I fell out of love of doing the creating because I just really enjoy doing that stuff. And now I'm like sometimes I get stressed out, be like, oh God, I didn't promote, I didn't go on Twitter, I didn't put this on Facebook, I didn't do that. I was like not panic attack, but just like the lowest of lows, being like, oh, I gotta go post this episode and then waiting like weeks to get them done, like just dragging my feet on stuff I should not be dragging my feet on. Mm-hmm. It was pretty frustrating to myself.
Well, it's an inspirational thing to me to have the wisdom to change gears and to look at what you're doing and the way you are. Let's before we run out of time, what can you tell people? Obviously, you've mentioned the Marvel podcast that's coming up and also this narrative project. What can you tell people today about either of those or other things that you're working on?
I'm not sure how much I'm allowed. The company is called Little Fire. Raz and Aiden are wonderful. I don't know how much I'm able to really speak to that. And also because it hasn't really picked up yet, so I don't know yet. But
absolutely. So that's something for people to stay tuned, basically, for more information.
Yeah. I don't know if you'll be hearing my voice on it or anything. I don't know how much I'll be involved creatively, or if I'm more like project manager, producer. But from the conversations I had, I'm really excited about that outcome of just getting to work with them. They're great. I do consulting, so if anyone out there wants to start a podcast, anyone who wants to build your audience, anything of that nature, it's. If money is an issue, just let me know. We'll figure something out. Listen, like I have a price, but if you're really interested, I will give you an hour of my time for less than what I charge because I truly just love this stuff and I want to see everyone succeed. The Marvel project we're in the middle of developing right now. It's going to be a fandom. Like the focus will start with Marvel, and we're going to ideas that will have different guests come on from people who work in the industry, who work with Marvel and the Marvel, and then the I call it the cottage industry of people who get paid to talk about Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
So a mixture of that, and then kind of grow that into having like people like you and other people come in. So less interview. We're gonna have last conversations, or this is, don't quote me because things could change. Different segments and like rumor mills, and do monthly video audio. We're really excited about that, and then work that way. Eventually, work our way into that, and then include more of Star Wars stuff too. So that will be really fun. I have a lot of ideas of pitching myself to be a guest on a lot of other people's podcasts, along with other people I know. Like I'm like, I was supposed to do a Let's Chat episode. That was always really hard to put your tail between your legs. And then I had a long list of people lined up that December got too tough. I just like, I'll reach back out in January, we'll set something up. And then January came around like, hey, so the show's not happening anymore. I'm sorry. But there's a couple people I was like, man, I want to do that episode. And I was like, well, wonder if we could do that episode somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And that way it's like, I can bring guests to other people. I need to build my media list, all that stuff. But yeah, so I really want to put a lot of my effort into just be guesting on other people's podcasts, YouTube videos, really any opportunities. And if all goes if things go as planned, by the time this airs, I will already be working in a new position in the field. Right. So that's kind of like, that would be really cool. So if anything, you're going to be seeing more of me.
Exactly. Do you have a name yet for the Marvel podcast? A place people can find it, or were we just too pre-launch for that?
I'm going to give, we do kind of, it's not, I had to look it up. I have to look it up right now. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's confirmed name, but this is what the last one we were working with. And I would love your feedback on it was, and this is, I give this all to Caroline, orange slices and pin particles. Because orange slices
and pin particles. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, because Scott from, Ant-Man always wants orange slices when he comes after his Giant Man.
Yeah.
And so we're still kind of playing around with the name, but that was one of the ideas. Like, oh, I like that.
I like that.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I'm really excited, and we'll definitely have a couple new episodes coming out, and like I guess I'm going to continue the way I've always done things, of just keep working really hard towards. I have a goal, and I think one of those goals is about to get hit, and I'm really excited to see what opportunities come next. Like building Let's Chat built me into a person who can now work in this industry, and I'm really excited to see what's going to happen. Like, I don't know what it is, but happened last week. I had this 2 days in a row where 3 really big things happened. On like the day before it happened, I was like, I don't know why, but I just feel like the next big thing is around the corner. And then it was. So
yeah,
really excited. Like, I'll tell you more, but we've already talked about it off mic, but there's a potential, it looks like I might have a position somewhere that I'm really excited about.
Really exciting. Well, thank you, Chris. Let's just say to everybody out there, if they do want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to hit you up with the show? I mean, I'm assuming all of the old avenues are still open, but why don't you tell people what those are?
Yeah, I'm not taking anything down. So everything, podcast itself, please don't unsubscribe. But anywhere, Apple, Spotify, Good Pods is my favorite personally. That's the app I've been using. But anywhere you find podcasts, you can find me on the show itself. I'm very active in our Let's Chat podcast community Facebook group, and I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram and TikTok at Let's Chat Podcast. And hopefully, actually can learn how to make proper social media strategies. Because thank you, Caroline, for doing all that. Because I'm excited to learn. I'm excited to learn a lot.
Yeah. Well, excellent. And I am at Break-A-Brain on Twitter is my best point of contact if anybody wants to reach out to me also, especially if you want to hit me up about the Let's Chat Live, if you're interested in being a podcast that is highlighted, or if you'd like to maybe help us do some interviews here and there too, open to talk to you about that. So.
And since Dwight won't do it, please check out Broken Brain. It is a fantastic podcast. I'm absolutely loving that you're merging with your love of pop culture with a mental health piece. I think I've now become I've been a listener, but I find myself listening more than I ever have when you did like a Spider-Man one with like that kind of stuff.
Yes,
it just tickles. Yeah,
We've
that
hit a
tickles my
lot, and I
fancy.
noticed that the last month or so we've hit a lot of hardcore pop culture things where we're highlighting more new projects. Sharon Blady, who is a mental health advocate, she used to be the health minister for Manitoba, like Canada, like the province,
Eh?
and somehow got associated on LinkedIn, and she is a mental health trainer who has for years used Marvel to help people reframe their symptoms as superpowers. And so we become friends and working on the show together. She just comes on and we're recording, I think next week, about the Hawkeye show and talking about how to redevelop your own symptoms and find your own superpowers and things like that. So
I mean,
yeah,
that's literally my origin story of what we just talked about.
exactly. So yeah, we'll be talking
Yeah.
about orange slices together at some point too.
No,
Sure.
I love that, and that's the thing too. I hope, and the Marvel, that's probably a guest we're going to try to hit up.
In fact, later today, Abby Perez, who you met, she does the Friends and Friends podcast. You met her.
Oh
We did
yeah,
our panel discussion.
that was so
Thanksgiving.
fun.
She and I are going to record an episode about Disney's Encanto later on today. So yeah, there are a lot of fun things going on there with pop culture and psychology at the Broken Brain. So
no, I guess that's like the Dwight approach of like, I know you're a licensed therapist and stuff, like you have your private practice, but like you've been able to build out a career in the podcast industry while still keeping your main career, like you're producing and growing, and it's fun, right? And
it's fun. It's great. It's a real connection. People don't really use that phrase anymore. The synergy. That's a phrase that you and I are old enough probably to recognize from when we were little baby workers in the workforce. Maybe I'm the only one old enough to. But people used to say synergy, and then we'd laugh and roll our eyes, right? And now it's like, but it's the concept of bringing everything together, blending things together, and that's why I think podcasting really opens it up for that too. So.
Yeah, of all the ways to make a podcast, I thought it's funny. I didn't go for the sponsorships. I didn't go for all that stuff. It was the synergy of like, let me use Let's Chat as my microphone to essentially I built out a resume to then go work in this. I'm 37, and I'll be honest, I'm absolutely terrified. But to quote Carrie Fisher, "Be afraid, but do it anyway." So I guess the big difference now of what from about a year ago for me is I'm equally scared. I'm just going to do it this time. Yeah. I'm going to be scared and actually do it. Where
absolutely
that was not the case for me. Like it took me just for side note, anyone doesn't know, like I got pulled out of my job last year for burnout or in 2020. Like I look back, I'm like, there's been a lot of times I probably should have left and I just kind of got in my own way. Well, also the other fact that like opportunity to work in this industry did not exist as much in Rhode Island as it did now. So like, it's been a mixture of things. It's not like it was like, I waited for 8 years to get here. It's like, well, for the first 5 to 6, there's maybe one company in our entire state that I could have worked at. And now that has changed. But that was not the case until recently. Like our industry, we, like you and I, we couldn't do these jobs really until the pandemic, if you really think about it, because everything was New York, LA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unless you're freelance, and I don't know if I can do that. I'm not ready to do that.
Well,
yet.
And now everybody, I remember the big podcasters started talking during the pandemic about, wow, we're using Zoom. Isn't this crazy? And they're used to sitting in a studio, and if someone was remote, they were sitting in another radio studio. Right, exactly. And I remember, I think it was John Hodgman on his podcast was making a huge deal about, wow, I can see people because we're using Zoom instead of just networking through the radio stations. Isn't that crazy out there? Doesn't everyone think that's crazy? And I was like, who doesn't think it's crazy? Most of us podcasters, us indie podcasters, we don't think it's crazy. We've been doing this forever. And then everybody was like, oh, wait, this technology sounds good enough. We can actually use it. And so
I love the indie podcast community, and I've definitely had my, issues with it. And I know that I noticed early on too, like my ambition was outgrowing some of the people around me. And I definitely have some people, there's naysayers, and I've had some awkward conversations and people who disown me or don't talk to me, or they removed our episode because we had some falling out or whatever. Wow. And it's hard, but again, that all goes back to the shame and like that stuff of like, that stuff really hurt. Like I remember like it really hurt, but I'm like moving forward, but thank you, man. This is cool.
Anytime.
I can't wait till we do this in person.
Oh, it's gonna be great. It's gonna happen.
and I can't wait to come back to Broken Brain, because that's always a good time. And that was one thing too. I would guest on your show and get way more downloads or acknowledgement for any work I was doing on mine. And I was like, huh, Dwight's doing something different. I got to listen to Dwight more.
Having you on mine, that's what a bump. That was the bump, the Chris Revill bump.
I'll take it. Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks so much.